Yeah, I need my glasses. I can't see
He's
anybody.
been sitting there.
That's Steve's way of making a joke.
Well, I don't know.
You have to understand Steve.
Must be a workshop.
It is a workshop. And for the benefit of those out in the listening audience and we do have a closed session that's been added to the agenda after the non-agenda items today.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I think both the mayor and Councilman Garza have been
They've been
asked-
excused.
Excused, yes.
Yes, that's what I understand. Okay, well, let's go ahead to the first item and get this started.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am David Hill. And without further ado, we'll get right into it.
Thank
But before I get to the slides, I want to preface everything that I say because I measure everything by, and I don't know if I'm blocking your view. Tell,
I also have a
We got it.
representation here,
oh,
so,
okay, thank you.
but I know what a bell curve is, so I'm good.
Great. But I measure everything against this bell curve, the standard deviation. And in a perfect world, if the sample size is large enough, of course, 2/3 of your workforce, again, whatever measurement data point that you're looking at, should be in that middle 1/3 of that bell curve. You should have a few on that very far left side, a few on the very far right side, most everybody. And again, whether you're measuring performance or height or weight or whatever it may be. So we're going to take a look at some charts, and I want the bell curve to be that backdrop that you view those. So the very first thing I looked at, now, these first couple of charts we're going to take a look at are the charts that Holly provided to me at the beginning of the study. So that was a snapshot of that one time at the beginning of the study. So the very first thing I took a look at was years of employment. Unlike a bell curve, I have a technical inability to reproduce a bell curve, so my bell curves look more like a St. Louis arch. So you're looking at that arch, that represents a 25-year career. Your average years of employment, all employees, is 8.2 years. That's pretty average. Average employment length of the studies that we conduct in North Carolina are in that 8 to 9 year period. So you're average when it comes to the length of time that your employees have worked with you. But now you can see that there are a considerable number of newer employees on that left side of the bar graph. The highest graph, or the highest bar on that graph, are those employees who came to you in calendar year 2018. So you had 12 employees who came to work for you in 2018. So when I took a look at those 12 employees who came to work for you in 2018, I broke those down by department and then by actual classification. So we had 6 employees who came to work for you out of that 12 who came to work for you as police officers in the police department. And then you can see the distribution of those others. The next slide represents employee salaries as a percentage above the minimum for their pay grade. That comes as close to being in a perfect world. Your distribution of employees comes to almost being as perfect as it can to represent that bell curve, except for those few employees who just recently came to work with you, those 2018 and 2019 employees. So if you looked at that bar graph, the salary administration policies, procedures, all of those things that you have been doing over the last 4, 5, 6 years has resulted in a distribution of employee salaries in their current pay ranges that comes to in my opinion, comes to being as close to a perfect distribution as you can get. Your average employee salaries above minimum is 24%. Now, your salary range is 50%. From a minimum salary to a maximum salary is 50%. Your average salary is 24%. Again, almost perfectly right there in that highest point of that bell
I
curve.
had two questions for you. What's
Yeah.
the one on the left that says we're 4 to 6% and it's at 9? What is the left-hand number 0 through 10?
Okay, those are, the very first one is employees at their minimum.
Yeah, but what's the 0 through 10 on the left-hand column?
That's just to establish in my formulas, anything above 0. So that very first minimum is 0, 0, 0.
I'm asking both. What's the 0 through 10 on the left-hand column, and then what?
Number of employees, I'm sorry.
Number of employees.
Number of
So we have
employees.
0 employees. We have 9 employees that are 4 to 6% on that first high column.
Exactly.
So we have 9 employees that are that far above the minimum.
Yes, sir. And most of those are right about the 5% mark.
And are those you said those are brand-new employees, or?
Those are relatively new employees. Those are employees who have, within the past 12 months, completed their probation period and have advanced 5%. So those are employees who have been with you at least 6 months and have now received their 5% probationary period increase. So even though that distribution is in 2%,
Right. I'm just trying to understand, does that mean that those 9 employees are that much higher than the average? I'm having a
oh, no,
hard,
no.
I mean,
That means that their salaries are only 5% above the minimum.
okay.
Yeah, it's the number of 9 employees
Right.
makes it look like it's skewed out, but
Yes.
it's just the number.
But and that's why I have that arch in there. That's showing you that on that left side, those are employees whose salaries are the closest to being at the grade minimum.
Okay. And the
So
one
even
in
though-
dead center, we have 10 employees that are right smack in the average.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just trying to,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yeah, it does, visually,
I'm just
It-
trying to
it-
understand
it
what you're
doesn't-
representing here.
yeah,
Number of
it looks
employees.
like it's out of sync with the bell curve, but it's just a number, so.
And that's because of the number of relatively new
New people.
employees you have.
Got it.
So it's these employees, these 12 who came to work for you in 2018, who now have salaries that have advanced their probationary period 5% increase.
So they're the ones that are closest to where they need to be.
Now, in the
No.
real world, this is where you would want all employees to be,
Where?
at the midpoint. That's the market
Right.
value of the position. And I'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes, but
Okay.
that highest point of that bell curve
Right,
is the market value of a position.
okay.
So for every one of your positions, as an employee comes to work, they come to work at or near the minimum.
Holly, how many total employees does this represent? This doesn't include like part-time?
Correct, this is just full-time.
Full-time equivalents.
So a little over 100, 110.
Okay, so if we have 110, roughly 10%, 10 of them would be right smack in the middle. Is that what you're saying? That's what you're,
Yes, in a standard deviation, or a standard
Okay.
distribution.
and 10% of them are dramatically below her. Okay, thank you.
So when we began the study, we took a look at, now 4 years ago, we included probably 20 or more local governments in your study. That included a lot of local governments that geographically were close to you, but other than just being geographically close to you, didn't have a lot in common with Carolina Beach. So for this study, we reduced the number of local governments that we looked at down to 12. Most of those, again, geographically are close to you, but we did include 2 western end of the state local governments that are similar to you in that they have a fluctuating population where they go from relatively small numbers seasonally to considerably large numbers. So we threw those in there just to take a look at what's happening in the western end of the state in communities that are similar to Carolina Beach that have fluctuations in population.
And just a question, which one of these communities do you think are closest in size to the population of Carolina Beach?
In population?
Mm-hmm.
Most of what we took a look at were,
Because I know Wrightsville Beach and Curry Beach are much smaller.
yes,
I don't know anything about Black Mountain and Boone. Bald Head has different dynamics. So I'm just trying to look at what's very similar to us.
the similarity here is the direct competition for labor.
Okay.
That becomes the most important part, not how large or small your neighbors may be. Wilmington certainly is considerably larger, but Wilmington sits right next door to you. So what we took a look at here was, where are those places, except for, of course, Boone and Black Mountain, where are those places that tomorrow morning, any of your employees could leave their driveway and just do nothing other than drive in a different direction and go to work? That would be most of the places that appear on that list. So this last bullet point carries the most weight among who to include in these kinds of studies.
Okay.
But just quickly, the methodology. I came down, met with the town manager and Holly. We talked through the timeline, the methodologies, everything about the study, the scope of work. I met individually with each department director. I then, from all of those other places, collected all of that market data, began that analysis, came back, met with the manager and Holly, and reviewed those initial recommendations, my initial findings. Those then were reviewed by department directors. We then began making some adjustment based on internal relationships, because at that point, all I had was outside data looked at by somebody from outside the organization, making recommendations based on nothing other than Excel spreadsheet formulas, math. That information then was reviewed by department directors, and what becomes important at that point are the internal relationships. The market data, the math may have said position X needs to be in grade 10, one grade higher than position A, but when you look at the internal relationship of those positions, they probably need to be in the same pay grade. Or instead of one grade difference, there needs to be 2 grade difference. So that internal relationship, that review by the department directors, was that important part of that step that then ended up being the recommendations that you will see later in some data that was presented to Holly. So then I prepared an executive summary of all of that data, and then, of course, I'm here this morning to present the rest of that data, answer all the questions that you have. Now, the collection of the data. What is that? What does that look like? This is the worksheet, or this is an example of a worksheet that I have for every one of your classifications. Now, there are some classifications that every one of these other local governments had a corresponding or relevant position that I could measure that against. There were some that only had some few. There were positions like law enforcement, clerks and managers, that there are positions that, if you looked at their worksheet, there would be an entry for every one of those local governments. This one that I'm using as an example and the one after this are representative of how I went about looking at all of this data. From those other local governments, I collected all of the information about each of those classifications that were similar to your classifications, knowing that in the state of North Carolina, there is not a 100% match of any position. There are always, on average, somewhere in that 15, sometimes 20% other duties and responsibilities. You would think that a police officer in Murphy is the same as a police officer in Raleigh, is the same as a police officer in Carolina Beach. 85% of the time they are, but there's always that 10, 15%. So if I can get about an 85% match of duties, responsibilities, and authorities, that's about as close as you can get. So when I say these are the classifications that I measured your water system operator against, those are the ones that come closest to matching your classification. Now, what do I look at when I start looking at this data? You can see on your screen from each one of those local governments that had a similar kind of position, there's the pay grade range that they have that classification assigned to. And you can see the minimum, you can see the midpoint. The midpoint is that market value that I look at. That midpoint back to that bell curve, that midpoint of that range is that highest middle point of that bell curve. The maximum then would be that far right side of that bell curve. The next column is the actual average salary of all of their operators. Now, when you get below the bold line, the highlighted water system operator, that is you. Your classification is currently in your grade 14, and you can see what that range is, and then you can see what the average salary is for your water system operator. Now then, from that point, I'm looking at how competitive is your salary grade range to the average of the market. So when you advertise a position for water system operator, what is that salary that you're advertising? Or if your neighbors are advertising, what is the salary that they're advertising? So you can see.
I
Yes,
need
sir.
to ask a question. Mark, water system operator, is that our wastewater treatment plant? The head? We don't, okay.
Distribution and the water plants that we run at Alabama and
Okay, I'm just trying to understand, because we don't always understand
Sure.
what their job title is.
yeah, this is clean water distribution into the system.
Okay,
Or their pay. So that was my question is, you're saying below that green line is Carolina Beach?
Yes.
Our numbers, okay.
right.
Yeah.
But we also don't know, it goes back to that bell curve, we don't know if we're currently at the maximum of that, but you're just saying if we should have that vacancy and we have to go out to the market and hire someone, this is where our posting would come in currently.
Well, it shows the minimum and maximum for that range.
Right, but some of the things we've talked about is, we have some employees that have bumped up against their maximum pay
Yeah,
scale,
yeah,
and we don't have an opportunity, so I'm just trying to gauge.
right. Well, I think he's trying to give us information about the range itself for that job, not a particular individual.
Right,
Correct.
because probably greater than 80% of the time that I spend on studies is studying the classification without regard to individual employees who are in the position.
Right.
It's
And I'm
only
not
at
worried
the
about the
very end.
individual employee, I'm just wondering where they're at in the longevity of the pay scale, if we already pushed them all the way up. Right. Okay.
Well, in this case, this particular employee's salary is $39,041
Right.
at the beginning of the study. And all of the data that I'm now comparing against was collected in May. So I can already tell you that this, because of the beginning of the new fiscal year, if I collected this same data from these same places right now, on average, they will have gone up 2%. So right now, I'm saying that your classification in grade 14 is currently 11.2% below the average.
Okay, so one of the things that we've been trying to understand is a benefit package as well. So, for example, in the law enforcement, we've been advised that there's different comparisons on who's paying what in the way of medical and what it costs for an employee to pick up their family benefits versus what we charge an employee or how that works. This is strictly the pay scale. Is that right? Right, not a benefit study, just, so we have no idea if on top of this, our compensation for benefits or what we're paying or matching is above or below or in the hunt. Right, right. This is just pay.
Right, but I do think if someone's applying for a job, the benefit package factors in where they want to accept the job at. So I think that needs to be part of how we would look at how our benefit package compares to those communities as well. And ours has probably increased by 2% too, right, with the
COLA.
with the COLA.
You would implement that, and
I was going to ask that because I see that says May. When does our COLA?
It'll be in August,
In
end of the month, in August.
okay. So if we're compared to data today, instead of being 11.2% below market average, you'd be 13%. But then you would make that catch up next month. But for this particular classification, and even taking into account the average 2% that most of these places implemented July 1st, and the increase that you will implement in August, it's still going to be about that 11% difference, close to it. And in this particular case, the actual salary is 3% below the average salary of all of those other locations.
Right.
Now, this is one of your maintenance worker 2 classifications. Again, there's the individual data from all of those other local governments. One thing I didn't talk about in the first slide is that column next to average, the column that's titled CR. That's the comp ratio. That's the measurement back to the bell curve. That's the measurement of where is their actual average salary in comparison to their midpoint, that highest point of the bell curve. If their salary is above that midpoint, it's going to be a 1 point something. If you're exactly at midpoint, that's a 1.00. Any number less than 1 tells me that their salary and to what degree their salary is below the midpoint or the market value. The range is, how far is it from the minimum to the maximum? And you can see your range is 50%. And that's pretty standard, that's pretty average, but you can see that some places choose to have salary ranges of 76% or 54.96.
And that was actually going to be my next question. I know from my experience with the bell curve, they would always throw out the high number and the low number. Is that not something that you do, or?
Yeah, and that's why down I have the median. That's not exactly throwing out the high and the low, but I measure the average, but then I also measure the median. And then sometimes depending on the size of the market group that we're looking at, I'll have that throw out the top or the high, throw out the low. A lot of times,
Yeah, 76 is pretty high.
that
Yeah.
doesn't significantly change either the average or the median.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the average salary, I'm looking at the median salary. Like in this case, the average is 30,861 is the average minimum salary for that classification. The median is 31,300. My recommendation is that that position, which currently is in grade 11, be moved to grade 13. And you can see what that range would be if that classification was moved from grade 11 to grade 13. It would put that particular classification right there where if you were going to measure average and median, to be no less or be no greater, grade 13 is the pay grade that that particular classification should be assigned to.
Why, I'm sure there's a reason the CR for Black Mountain, Boone, and Wrightsville Beach are 0. You don't have an average, so I assume that's what skewed that.
In most cases, Black Mountain failed to provide to me actual salaries.
Ah,
Or I would say they have not yet
yeah,
provided that data. The other locations is they have this classification in that range that is showing for them. They don't have any employees assigned to that classification.
gotcha.
So you can see in this particular case, the salary needs to be adjusted 2 pay grades to put it in the pay grade that puts you at a market competitive position for that particular classification. Now, when you look at the individual employees that are in that particular classification, you can see that your average salary for the employees in that classification is $31,000. The average salary of those that I did have data for is 15% greater. So you're looking at a $31,000 compared to a $35,000 if you looked at individual employees. Again, at this point, I'm focusing on the classification.
Right, because there's actually different jobs in those other classifications, not the same job.
Not the same, not exactly the same.
Right,
So I'm just going to show you the 2 of these that we looked at. Every one of your classifications, whether it be for HR director or the police chief or planning director, every one of those classifications has a worksheet just like this.
got it.
So I'm comparing at this point, what is the proper pay grade? What pay grade should we assign maintenance worker to be market competitive? In this case, it needs to be reassigned from grade 11 to grade 13. Back to the water operator, currently in a grade 14, my recommendation is to reassign it to a grade 16. Again, to make it market competitive to the average and the median of those others. So we just looked at those 2 for examples, but combining all of your classifications, if you looked at just the entry-level salaries, the minimum, you're 10.9% below market, which is a little over 2 pay grades. On average, all of your classifications are about 2 grades off market. There's a 5% differential between each of your pay grades. So 2 pay grades would be 10%. If you looked at the actual average salaries, Carolina Beach compared to all of those other places, you're about 7.5% below all of those other locations. All right, there's a huge Excel spreadsheet that I then move all of that data to. And working through some formulas, I come up with recommendations regarding individual employees. That's that last 10, 15% of the time that I spend. So I spend a lot of time, the majority of the time, working on the classifications, getting the classifications in the right pay grade, and that's a combination of the market data and discussions or reviews by department directors. Where is that grade? Should it go from a grade 14 to a 16, like one of the ones that we just looked at? So working through that entire process, my recommendation to you would be to adopt the data that's on that spreadsheet that assigns each of your classifications to a pay grade that is as close as it can be to being compared directly to all of that external market data and all of the internal relationship data that goes into that calculation. Now, at the same time, I'll go back to that slide where we looked at employee salary distributions, where I told you that you came as close to being as perfect as you can be. You have as close to a perfect distribution of employees because of your last 4, 5, 6 years of salary administration, all of the policies, procedures, everything that you've done over that last 4, 5, 6 years have moved employees to be in, as perfect a position as they can. That's based on length of service, that's based on a number of factors. But I go back to that slide, and I say, now that we are recommending that you move each of these classifications to these different pay grades, move all of your employees from their current position in their relationship to their current pay grade, place them in the same position on the new grade as they hold in the current grade. If my current salary is 25% above minimum, and I'm in grade 14, I'm that general maintenance worker 2. I'm in a grade 11. I'm 25% above minimum. The position gets moved to a grade 13. Place me at grade 13 at that same 25% above minimum that I currently hold in grade 11. If you don't do that, one of the things that begins to happen is, if I don't move to that same position, that same comp ratio, instead of putting me at 25% above the minimum of grade 13, you say, okay, we can only, let's cap everybody at 10%. So I still get an increase in salary, but now my position is only 10% above minimum, not 25% above minimum. When the next newest general maintenance worker comes to work at the minimum of grade 13, not grade 11, after the completion of their probationary period, they get a 5% adjustment. I'm now at 10% above minimum. They're now a brand-new employee at 5% above minimum. There's only a 5% differential between my salary, and I've been here a long time, and this person who just started work. If you don't take that comp ratio and set it and move it from the old current scale to the new scale, you then begin to undo what you have done successfully over the last 4, 5, 6 years. You begin to cause salary compression.
And the risk of that is what?
The risk of that is you have long-serving employees who then you bring brand-new employees to work, making the same or nearly the same as my salary.
They will be disgruntled, to say the least.
Did you figure the budget impact of that?
Well, of course, a 1% calculating salary plus the associated FICA, retirement, 401k, and all of that. A 1% adjustment for your budget is about $64,000.
So,
So if I'm, back to my example, if I'm at 25% above minimum and I go up 2 pay grades, I'm still going to be 25% above minimum of grade 13, but now I'm 2 pay grades higher. That's a 10%.
Holly,
That's a 10% salary adjustment for me.
the spreadsheet that you were working on, did that take into account all these, and since then you've gone to department heads and looked at those adjustments, but that gross number that we had discussed before the budget cycle was based on this report?
That's correct.
And since then, you've done some modification, meeting different department heads to track that shift and the percentage above average. So that means that number that we've been discussing in the budget would have been taken care of in this, some of which Ed absorbed with the COLA.
Right.
And some of it we absorbed with the police pay benefit.
Right.
So that
So what's the difference?
remaining balance number
Yeah, we don't
is
know.
a number.
Do we know
Yeah,
that
we
number?
still need to know what our target is to
Right.
do the rest of it.
I thought we're probably around $500,000. That's
Yeah.
would be my
I think he has that on the next one.
Okay, sorry.
Good.
We always read
We
to
jump
the end
ahead.
anyway, we always.
Yeah,
Yeah, we always get to the bottom line as fast as possible.
yeah. I would have put that slide at the front, but,
Then you'd have nothing else, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I
it-
understand.
all right, now,
Shut
one,
down
one
after
of,
that.
one of the other things I would ask you to consider is adopting a formal pay and benefits statement. Very similar to a mission statement, very similar to a vision statement. It identifies or creates the opportunity for the identification of who Carolina Beach wants to be as an employer. Now, when I look at your website, I did not find a mission or a vision statement for the town. When I looked at individual departments, every department has a mission statement. But I didn't see, maybe it's there, I didn't see it, I did not see one that the town has a mission or a vision statement.
We, we do not have one. We are working on a communication plan with UNCW, and we're developing one through that process. So we're actually working on it now.
Good.
And this pay and benefits statement would support the overall department vision or mission statements as well as the towns. It sets in place the language of who you want to be as the employer. And again, it's not just pay, it's pay and benefits. And I have provided samples of those to staff. One of those samples actually is the vision, the pay and benefits statement that NAGS had adopted when I got finished with their study. I made this same recommendation. One of those examples that I provided to staff was NAGS head's statement. It's only about 3 or 4 sentences. There's another example in there that's 2 pages long. But Holly does have some examples of that. I hope that you would have the time to take a look at those and determine where or if you want to do that. My recommendation is that you do. It sets the guidelines
Right.
for where management, where staff needs to be. It affects recruitment, it affects retention,
Oh, yeah.
it affects everything about your workforce.
Everything should focus back on that. It builds on the mission
Yes, sir.
statement. And from my experience, the fact that you have a mission statement, that perception changes the way people look at you and how successful you might be.
Okay, here we are. So the actual salary adjustments to do what I just recommended, 413,000. But of course, to that, and not to ever be forgotten, are those associated FICA, retirement, 401K costs. And in your case, that's approximately 30%, so your overall cost would be $537,000.
Holly, does that include, is this the remaining, or is this,
The remaining does not include the COLA. The COLA is budgeted elsewhere, a different line item. This would be the remaining after COLA,
Okay.
Excluding
So-
the police.
excluding police officers.
Now, does that
okay,
take,
so you've already carved out, in other words, the original number you had was substantially higher, your number was higher than this, but you pared it down because we already did the COLA? Or is this your original number? And we,
This is a pared down number.
After colon, after the police pay study.
Correct. This is
Did-
still outstanding to bring everybody else up to the pay study result.
did you take into account the relative movement of everybody else as they do their COLA? Or did you just assume they didn't have a COLA?
This does not take into consideration that our neighboring communities may be moving another 2%.
Yeah, if they move 2%, that number will be higher than that. I'd like to see that number.
You'd have to redo, that would be
Yeah.
another scope of work you'd have to
True,
do. all
yeah.
those
One of the reasons I keep asking about the benefits, because particularly with the police department, I hear, well, they're getting different benefits in Wilmington. So I'd have to see how those benefit packages compare to each other. You know, so it's kind of hard to just look at the pay and not the benefits, for me, you know.
Well, it's a two-step, you're right.
Right. Because I keep hearing that comment that a lot of them went to Wilmington for this package or this package, but I don't know what those packages are.
Well, we can only bite off so much of the apple, so this is the first bite.
And benefits, a true comprehensive analysis of benefits actually takes longer to do than a pay study does, especially when you get into the health insurance.
Right.
Because just to say that somebody, well, our family coverage here is, and I'm just making this up, our family coverage here is $400 a month, but in Wilmington, it's only $200 a month. Well, if that's all you looked at, that's a no-brainer. I'm gonna go work for Wilmington.
Right.
Well, but once I get to Wilmington, and let's not pick on Wilmington, let's just make up, let's say.
Pick on Wrightsville.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, well, we can do that.
Hello, let's pick on Wrightsville. Make sure it's a workshop. We're allowed to have a little fun.
right, but let's say I make an employment decision to go based on that lower out-of-pocket family health coverage, only to find out that once I get over there, the deductible is twice as high as it
Yeah.
is here. And they've got a health insurance, a health savings account, FSAs, HSAs, and does the employer pay an X percent or X number of dollars up front, then followed by a percent or a dollar amount that the employee has to pay? What is that combination? To sit down and do that kind of analysis, it's probably a 9-month process. I could spend a career just analyzing health insurance plans.
Well, if it took you 9 months, in 3 months, it's gonna change,
Yes,
because every year it changes.
every year it changes.
Mayor, council, or Mayor Pro Tem Council, what we're looking to do is come back to you in August at your regular meeting and ask you to adopt what David's put before you as far as the pay ranges. So no money associated with it, just moving the grades to, as he showed that worker going from the 11 to the 13. So those that we've worked out, everybody would be able to move up, so their pay range would be in that position. We've already implemented the majority of the police department pay study to help with the recruitment and retention issue. And we are doing COLA later this year. We usually do, like David mentioned, most communities do it at the beginning in July. We're doing it into August. But the money's there for budgetary wise as if we did it for the whole fiscal year.
And how
So
much of this did we put in the budget for this year?
I don't have that number in front of me. I don't, but
Other than the police, we did the police separately.
Right.
Holly, do you remember, did we, and I apologize, we went through so many.
131 was what we budgeted for police, if that's what
I
you're asking.
understand. No, but I'm saying out of this 537 that we're looking at on the screen, did we account for any of that in the budget this year?
We did not.
Okay, that's why I just want to make sure.
We did not. So,
I guess that would be my question. How can we adopt a pay study when we don't have the budget for it?
you adopt the grades, so you move the grades up.
Well, then some point you're going to ask us for the money.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
We-
so
we-
that, I can't, I just don't know how I could support that. I
We-
think they're
we've
trying to
already-
be difficult, but it is about the money. How do you
We've
get
already
money?
moved the police up. So all their counterparts, if you're a 15 in the fire department and you're a 15 in the police department, you've already
I
you've already
understand
got
what you're
your
saying,
stuff.
but is there a suggestion for how we'd get the money?
Yes, I was getting to that.
Oh, good, okay. I'm jumping ahead again. Go
You'll
ahead,
bring
Ed.
you'll bring us.
It's about the dollars.
The cost and the solution.
The solution will be if we have that extra money that we didn't spend by implementing the COLA on July 1,
Yeah.
we will take a chunk out of the pay study, and Holly and I will sit down and figure this out. We haven't done it yet. And it will be dependent on what happens this year. If we have another hurricane or incident that cause issues, we may not have additional funds at the end of the year. But if we do have that additional funds that we didn't spend, at the end of the 1920 fiscal year, we can implement in the last pay period those funds to raise everyone's salary by a certain percentage. And that will be dependent on how much money we have at that time.
Right.
So we can take a chunk out of the pay study. So it won't be until the end of the year, and then we can go ahead and budget for that for the following year. The following year, we could do something similar. We can do a COLA, which will be based on consumer price index, what's going on around the world, and then we can implement that August, September, still have that extra chunk of change where we can do something similar, and hopefully in the next 2 years, we can bring everybody up to where
So you're saying that's a 2-year plan?
it,
So I'm concerned that in 2 years, it'll be a whole different pay study.
well, as long as we keep up with COLA. We need to keep moving up. If that's the one thing that when Mr. Hill was here 5-6 years ago, he said you have to keep up with COLA. If you don't keep up with COLA, well, he'll be back.
Yeah, if you keep up with COLA, then you keep pace with everybody else.
Right. If you keep up the consumer price index, you keep up everybody else. And I know we like to see him, but we won't see him again.
Right. And Holly, rather than have him come back and do the rest, Colin, is there a way that you could actually determine a few of these communities, just call and say, what was your COLA? What did you do your COLA? And that way we'll know
Yes,
a
that's a
relative.
Good question.
Yeah, just give them a call, and I'm sure that, I mean, it's public record. They should share that with you.
We
So
also
we can see how we
participate
are.
in league studies every year. We participate in league studies. The league gathers all this information
Oh, then
for
you can
all
pull
of
it from
their,
them.
so I can just pull it off the league surveys.
Yeah, that would be
Also,
good.
the relationship, your ongoing relationship with your consultant is such that he's not a one and done guy. I talk to him all the time.
Right.
Anytime, say, Mark created a new job or Brian creates a new
Yeah.
job and I'm trying to grade it and slot it where it needs to be, I certainly run it through the external third party to get an unbiased look at it before we determine
Yeah.
what 14 or 15 or 17, what
Right.
number to assign in salary grade. I always run it through the
Yeah.
consultant. That's the beauty of an ongoing.
Well, I just think if you can determine what their COLA is, rather than assume that they did 2%, they may not have done 2%.
We're all hooked in throughout the state. We share that information, but
Yeah.
Councilmember Pierce, to your question as to why would we want to in August bring you back a revised salary study, salary schedule, where we move in the guy from the 14 to the 16, you may recall we've talked previously about we have 10 employees who have reached the maximum of that range. So through the course of their career, so if we have a little over 100 employees, we've got 10% of our population who have maxed out their salaries. You've heard this again and again. I'm not able to advance in my salary. It may potentially be affecting my long-term retirement. So those folks are very excited to hear that we may potentially be moving those grades up. It does not affect their salary. They don't get an automatic pay increase. It just allows them some career growth and some career movement.
Because it'll still maintain the percentage from minimum when they place you at that next higher level, right?
That's correct. That's what
So
that
if they're at
compa ratio.
55%,
They'll sit
or
back down at
50%, because
55%.
if the range is 50%, then they'd be put 50% in there, which may not put them to the max at that next level.
And it allows them some salary growth
Right.
over the next couple of years through merits or whatever.
Yeah,
That's why it's important, even though there's no money associated with it.
right.
Thank you.
So they may not get an immediate bump, but they will be potentially have another step that they'll be able to advance. That's good.
Now I will, back to your question. I will tell you how you can adopt a new pay plan and it won't cost you anything. That is not my recommendation. I
Well,
will
we
use-
like that recommendation.
Well, I'd like to
We-
hear
we-
that.
You know, we're as cheap as the next guy. So you think I'm not paying attention? I heard that.
I will use these two examples. Right now, this water system operator is in grade 14 with a salary of 39,041. The position moves from grade 14 to grade 16 which has a minimum salary of $37,035. So the person that's in that position has a salary that is greater than the minimum. So you can move the position from a grade 14 to a grade 16 and leave this person at their current salary. But instead of being $6,000 above minimum, they're going to be $2,000 above.
It just leaves them more long-term growth for that that person.
And that's what we'll do in August.
But that's what creates salary compression.
Right, but that ultimately, I think what I'm hearing you say is we are still underpaying a number of our employees, and we need to address that in our budget. And that's the only way to do that is, we are not compensating our employees where we need to be competitive in the market.
Right.
We can change the grade, we can change the minimums and maximums, but if we don't put more money on the paycheck, we're not getting done what our employees need to be competitive. Is that
Right.
Two prongs, yes.
right? See, Holly's been here long enough, that's a simple yes or no. Yes.
She understood.
But again, just comparing you to everybody else, you're 7.5% below the average salary of where everybody else is.
People keep calling me, I keep turning it off.
So if there are any more questions, we will bring this back for you August regular meeting, and that will be for the pay ranges only. We won't be asking for any money at that time.
So add that to this. All right.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
fun.
Thank you.
Okay, now, update on the new website. Thank you, David.
Good morning.
I wondered why you were here now. I know.
A few months ago, management asked me to look into our website. And so I took a look at it, found that I really hadn't worked much with it. So in looking at it, found that it was difficult to navigate. It's definitely difficult on the backside of things to make modifications and updates, not mobile friendly at all. So I spoke with Revise, which is who we're using now, to see if they had any upgrades, any changes they could make to make it a more user-friendly site. Unfortunately, they didn't have anything to offer. I did finally convince them to make it mobile friendly, so we got that far. But then I ended up going to the city of Wilmington and working with their communications team just to discuss their procedures and processes and how they work. And they recommended Granicus, which is who does their website. And so Dan at Granicus, I contacted him. He reached out and presented to the website committee that I put together. I think it was pretty much unanimous with the committee that we were definitely big fans of Granicus. Just the functionality that they offer for efficiency for staff, but as well as for residents and ease of use navigating the site. And so I just asked if Dan would kind of give you guys a quick overview of what he can do with Granicus for us. And so he's going to just do a 10 to 15 minute demonstration for you guys once we get him on the phone.
Doing it remotely.
What's that?
He's doing it remotely.
Yes, he's in Denver.
Wow.
I told him we were going to be a little late. He said that was no problem, but
You heard that, Steve. Denver.
I quickly did the math, and it's only 8 o'clock there, so. Not
What
even
about your old stomping grounds, though?
south of there yet.
Yep. Well, I knew it was.
And that's a picture of the Lincoln Monument and the reflecting pool in DC.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Hey, Dan.
Hey.
It's Jeremy. We got you here. We got your screen up, so I think we're
Okay.
ready to roll.
All right. Excellent. So, well, Gigi, thank you for introducing me. I appreciate that. It's actually, I was watching the meeting there. It was nice to finally put a face to the name. So I'll start off with a little bit about Granicus. I'll then go on this website that we've designed and we currently are hosting in your area. And then we'll look at the dashboard and I'll show you some kind innovative ways that we've found to better engage with your residents, as well as create more efficient processes for the back-end user or the administrator in your office there. So Granicus, we've been around for about 20 years. We work with over 4,000 government organizations, from everyone from the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, all the way down to Cary, North Carolina, Wilmington, as you heard. We offer a suite of products. We have meeting and agenda software. We offer GovDelivery communications network that we can provide, as well as the GovAccess website CMS that I'm going to present to you here. If you do have any questions, please feel free to stop me as we're going along. I won't be bothered by that. All right, so starting out, we'll kind of look at some of the local sites that we've built. So here's Wilmington. Point out some of the design features here that I think stand out and make it unique. So across the top here, we do have a mega menu with a lot of information. This is fully customizable by your staff. So if Gigi wanted to add a page or subtract a page out, she can do that without calling us. You don't need us to do that for you. As you can see, you can add images into this menu as well. So if you wanted to put a message from the mayor with the mayor's photo here, you can do that. And across here, how do I here is just an easy way to find information for your residents. Things that they may be looking for, come in your website to find. How do I, pay for a parking ticket, things like that. This design here is considered a search-centric design, even though it's a little off-center. Wilmington requested to have it a little off-center, so we built it that way for them. The background images is in a rotating carousel. You can have that as a slideshow, just a static image if you wanted, or you can have a video background. If any of you are into photography, you can use a drone. I'll show you a site here that we built where one of the council members actually was into photography, used a drone, got some shots of the city, and it looks pretty good. Scrolling down, we do have our action buttons here. These can be customizable by you as well. When we build out your site, we do run analytics on what people are coming to your website to find in the most popular services or search items, so that way we can tailor these action items to your residents. And then as things progress, if you're finding other things are being searched more frequently, you can do that as well. So you can change these around. Continuing down, we do have a news section here. You can see a little information about the council meeting, some links to the budget, a newsletter as well from Wilmington, and then a calendar layout here on the bottom. You can have multiple different calendars. So you can have a city council calendar, you can have a community events calendar, Parks and Rec, or one master calendar that's going to give you all the events for all the calendars each day. Are there any questions on Wilmington site or anything that kind of stands out?
No, not for me. It
Great.
looks good.
Okay, so we'll move over to Cary, North Carolina. This is another one I wanted to point out. So this one here, again, we have these action items across the bottom. You can see some of the most popular things, different classes throughout the town, jobs, water bill, paying the water bill, I should say, garbage recycling days, the playtime in the park, something they're promoting currently. So they've built it into the homepage here with the image as well as a link to learn more and register for that event. Search bar here, a little bit lower out of the way so you're not blocking any of the photo here. Again, the menu across the top. And a different calendar layout. So this one's got basically the next 6 days built out for different events throughout the town, and all the calendars are linked. So you can see these are different community events, while this is meetings that are going on. So the next site I'm going to show you is actually a little bit further away from you, but I did want to show it to you for the video background that's attached. So this is Gilbert, Arizona's page. Sometimes it does show up a little glitchy because I'm on the GoToMeeting, but if you wanted to pull it up on your own, you'll see that the video streams smoothly. There's not an issue with it. But just kind of a cool idea here to put the search bar here in the center, but then have a video background kind of showing off the town. 4 buttons across the bottom here. I think you'll notice that this is a little bit smaller of a action item row here than the other sites I've shown. Again, this is customizable, so you can, let me get out of that, so that you can add or subtract different action item buttons. So you could have 2, you could have 12, as many as you want, really. One other thing I'll show is I'm kind of pressed for time. So engaging with your citizens is important, but engaging with new citizens, I think, is very important as well. We've come up with an innovative way to do that here at Columbia County. So as Gigi said, I'm actually in Denver. I moved here last year from Florida. I knew a handful of people out here, but when I got into town, I found it difficult to find some of the services I was looking for. So this, to me, is genius. A moving to Columbia County guide. It's going to lay out the different school areas. So as you can see here, here's your student-to-teacher ratio. Here's my utility services. Who's going to take care of my water, electric, phone, TV, internet. When my trash and recycling days are. Here's my voting districts, driver's license offices, hospital locations. And this is something just that you can very easily build out on your own. It's, it wouldn't take any real input from us on our side. We try to give you a lot of flexibility on what you can customize and try to give you the keys, so to speak. So, are there any questions about any of the sites I've shown? If not, I'm going to go ahead and dive into kind of the back end and show what it would look like for the user.
Okay.
Okay. So you can access the CMS from any web browser. It could be Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer. As long as it's got an internet connection, you can log in. Once you log in, this is your dashboard here. This is fully customizable by the user as well. So you can add or subtract blocks here. You can see I have different buttons here I can add in or I can take away. I can add different content blocks here, create news stories, channel traffic, more analytics on the back end here for the tracking of who's on your site, what device they're using, whether they're on a phone, mobile, tablet, desktop, mobile, or tablet. As the main administrator, I can lock this down so I can build someone. If a department head wanted to run, let's say the police department, the chief of police wanted to run his own police department subpage, he can do that, and I can lock this down so that he cannot do certain things. So if I wanted him to be able to add an image, but not create a new page, I can exit this out and save it so that he can't create a page. I can also put workflows involved here, so to be published or to be approved. So if, again, you're going to have someone taking care of their own page, but you want to sign off on what they post before it goes up on the internet, you can do that here. And here's a snapshot of my most popular pages in the last 90 days. We use analytics to track, where, like I said, where people are going, what they're searching for. And so you can see here with the course catalog, this is the second most popular page. Maybe you can use that information to add a link on the homepage, right? When they get there, it could be on the image, and it says, a quick link to the homepage or to the course catalog. As you're going through this, if you do need help, we have multiple different ways to get help. So if you're trying to create a calendar event, let's say, and it's been a while since you've done this, you can click on the Learn More here. This is going to pop up a CMS video. It's going to basically just walk you step by step through how to create a calendar event. And as you can see, you can do that with really any of the things that you'd be updating on the page. If that doesn't help, I can click on the support up here. It's going to give me some online references, some extra CMS videos, more in-depth recorded webinars. And if that doesn't help, this help button here follows you throughout the entire process. I can get help for the certain page that I'm on, or I can contact support if I'm having a very serious issue. I can contact support here by submitting a ticket. Pretty much just a subject, a description. I can add the link to the page I'm having trouble with, and I can take a screen grab if I wanted to and upload it here to show a warning box or something that may be popping up that I have a question about. I can also make a phone call here. This time is actually 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific. It just hasn't updated my system. And then after hours, I do have a live chat option to chat with someone and get help. What's cool about the chat option is that as you are chatting, it will show them kind of the step-by-step of how you got to where you are so that they can kind of backtrack you out of wherever you're stuck. Any questions about the help features there?
No.
Okay. So a couple of the cool things I'll show you. I'll show you how to update the page. I'm going to add some photos to the page. I'm going to promote an event. With it being summer and you guys being on the beach, let's do a beach volleyball. So there's going to be a beach volleyball league over the summer. So there's a few different ways to promote this event. So up here on the right, I'm going to click on my site preview. This is my demo site that's loading here. So I'm able to view my entire web page right here through the site preview. I can view it in a tablet version, or I can view it in a mobile version to make sure it all looks clean for my residents, depending on what they're using to access the site. So as I go back here, if I wanted to edit, let's say I wanted to change this photo up and promote that beach volleyball league, I'm going to click on the edit pencil up here. As you can see now, as I hover over different items here, I'm going to get this little wrench in the top right corner. By clicking that, I can now access my library of photos that I've saved into the CMS here. So I'll go to my Parks and Rec here. I'll take my beach volleyball photo, and I'm going to drag this down here. I can name a slide title, so I can say Volleyball League. I can do a description and say sign up now. And then I can link this to a page or to a form in my link tree here. So in my community here, I've already built out under community events my volleyball sign up form. So I'm going to just click save on that. I'm going to publish it. All right, and here's my volleyball league sign up. So just by clicking on this, it's going to bring me directly to the form to sign up for the volleyball league. Here's my form. I can link that to a web page. I can link that to a calendar event. I can link it, like I said, to this page that I built out with a form on it. You can see what this form will look like as well in mobile. You can customize this mobile version. So if you didn't want, let's say you had a Twitter feed and you wanted to put the Twitter feed on here, but you didn't want it on the desktop, you can do that. Moving back to my dashboard, I'm going to go ahead and promote this event. So I'm going to create a calendar event to promote my volleyball league. So I'm going to click on create an event here. So starting out, I'm going to choose my content group. I'm going to go to Parks and Rec, because this is under my Parks and Rec group. Volleyball league here for the title. I can put a start date and an end date. So let's say that league starts this Saturday, and let's say it ends in a month. So we'll say August. Whoop, here we go. Say it ends August 24th. All right. I can put subtitles in. I can add an introduction, a little bit more information if I wanted to put the location of the place or the park where it will be. I can add an image here to my calendar event. I can choose the location, so I can pre-populate all my location venues or my parks into this, just so it takes a little bit of time, saves a little bit of time, I should say, makes things flow a little more efficiently. Here's my main content area where I would add all the content about the event. I can add images into this. I can add videos into this as well if I wanted to. And here's my tags. So these will help when people are searching my website. Let's say people are searching for sports, community events, community sports. I can type in any kind of tag that I want to add to this. So my next order of business would be to share this item. So I'm going to click on my next section here, and it's going to bring me to my sharing channels. I can include this in my e-notification newsletter that I can send out as often as you want, monthly. I can attach this to Facebook. I can also attach this to Twitter. Let's say that I wanted to attach to my Facebook. As you can see, I can have multiple Facebooks as well. If I have a Parks and Rec separate Facebook, I can use that. But for right now, I'm just going to use my main Facebook. Once I click that, it's going to generate a post for me. It's going to have a URL that is going to lead me back to the event page. So it's basically using Facebook as a promotional tool to bring people back to your website, because building a website is only half of the battle. Building a website and then getting people to come to it is the ultimate goal. So for this, I'm going to put volleyball starts Saturday. I can add an image here. So I can add that same image if I wanted to, or I can add a different image. Let's say I want this image here. I can put my content down here, whatever I want. If I want to say, maybe $10 to sign up for the volleyball league, and it's going to be at such and such beach, I can schedule this post to go out. So I can say I want this post to go out on July 24th. I want it to go out at 7 a.m. as everybody's driving into work and on their Facebook. I can repeat this. I can do it weekly if I wanted to, so I could have the same exact post go out Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a number of occurrences prior to the event. So I could say 3 weeks before the event, I want this post to start going out every Monday, Wednesday, Friday until the event date starts. If I didn't want to repeat this, but I did want to build out a campaign, let's say this is where the citizen engagement really comes in handy, and where we're the leader. By clicking an add button down here, I can generate a second Facebook post. So for this post, I can say volleyball starts tomorrow. I can schedule this to go out the day before. I can add a different image, so I can put something else in here instead of the same image, so it looks like I'm making a totally different post. Let's put this one in. There we go. And I can schedule this, like I said, to go out the day before the league starts. And I can do it at whatever time I want. I can do 6 p.m. So in one sitting, I can build out an entire campaign for an event. I can add as many of these as I want to. I was thinking, so like I said, I'm from Florida. I know hurricane season very well. If you wanted to maybe promote where your local shelters are going to be, evacuation routes, things like that, and you wanted to have it a recurring post on Facebook, you could do that in one sitting beginning of the hurricane season and have it run the entire hurricane season. So, any questions on what I've shown so far? Okay. I can turn on registration for this event as well. So just down here, I can click on this toggle switch, pull this over. So I can put a maximum number of attendees. So let's say that I'm going to field 6 teams of 8 people. I can put my 48 in here. I can enable a wait list to make sure that people are emailed when someone cancels out of that. I can have a registration deadline. I can take an online payment, so it's going to be $10 for the volleyball league per person. I can accept that on the internet here through the form. And I can have this emailed to a certain person. So if I wanted every form that the residents are filling out to be emailed to the Parks and Rec director, I can do that. Once I'm done, I just finish and review, publish it, and it will be posted up on the website. The Facebook post will go out on time. So one other thing I do want to show is our forms module. I think it's very important in a couple regards. I'll show you. So I'll go back to my dashboard here. My forms are going to be up here. I'll click on this. All right, so here's a list of all the forms that I've built out and my colleagues have built out. So everybody, it does give you the name of who built it, when they built it, so you can keep track of all your forms. I'm going to go back to my site preview. I want to kind of walk from this step. As you can see here, I have on my action items down the bottom here, I have a report of concern. So this would be something like maybe graffiti in the neighborhood or a pothole in the street, traffic light out, things like that. So if I click on report of concern, it's going to bring me to a form page that I've just built out, kind of generic. What is the concern? I can have a resident add an attachment, a photo of the pothole or of the graffiti, and then I can have them receive a copy of their submission by putting their email address in here. But
just
looking at
a
this form, I would
question
like
right
a little
there.
bit more information.
That's what I was waiting for you to get to. So does that go to a general email? And can that be anonymous? How's that set up?
Sure, I'll show you right now. So going back into my dashboard, I'm going to pull up this form that I built out for the report of concern. All right, sorry, here we go. All right. I'm going to edit the design of this form. I'll show you how easy it is just to build one of these out. So here is that form that I just pulled up. What is a concern? Add an attachment. Well, I want some more information. So I want to pull this out. Here are all the different things that I can have filled out. So I want to know the person's name that's reporting it. But looking at this, I don't need the title for the person. I really don't need the middle initial either. Let's just go first and last name. Keep it kind of simple. We'll go back to my list of items I can drag out. What is the concern? Okay, that's good. I do want their full address because I want to make sure they live in the city. Okay,
Okay, are you saying that has to be in there, or you're proposing it be in there? I'm having a little hard time hearing you. I'm sorry, what? So it can be anonymous?
No, not at all.
I just want it
Yeah,
to be
you could
simple.
put anything. You could have it completely anonymous if you wanted. You could take this out completely, and you could take the full address out, and you could just have a box that says this. What is a concern? Add an attachment.
So you
I
say,
do
you're
think-
saying we can do it any way we want to. I'm looking at you, G, 'cause I'm having a little trouble hearing that. So will that go to each department head, or what is your proposal? You know what we're talking about, Steve, is complaints, okay? Which
Yeah,
is,
so we-
all of it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but that's what
I
we have
think-
the biggest, concern about from citizens.
Right, and I think the big thing about this is that it's completely customizable. So we can customize what type of complaint or where it's going, or, you know, if maybe we have a place for service requests, goes to one email or goes to one person, but maybe there's other issues that people are reporting that go somewhere else. So I think the idea for me is just that it's so flexible that we can kind of switch it up as we need to.
And is
yeah.
that somehow going to get put into City Works too?
Yeah, so service requests would ultimately come through, and then we could enter them into CityWorks. You have to track the work and to get the work request out to the guys. But ultimately, this is about making it easy for residents to let us know there's a problem and getting it to the right
Yes,
person.
and this form can be emailed to a particular person within the organization. If you wanted, like I said, let's go with the pothole idea. If you wanted Public Works to get an email, the Director of Public Works to get an email, a heads up, hey, there's a pothole here, this can be emailed off to them. I do want to show one other quick thing that might kind of help with this as well. So if I put this radio button list out here, and let's say that I want to know if this is a danger to the public. Danger. Because that's very important. If this is something that's dangerous to the public, I need to know about it immediately. And I don't need someone to just fill out a form and then it takes a day or two for someone to see it in their email inbox. What I can do is I can put conditional logic on this form. So I can say yes or no. Let me pull this up. Here we go. I can delete option 3. I can have multiple options if I wanted to. But by putting conditional logic on this, I can have it either emailed to someone, I can have a redirect. So once they click yes, this is a danger, it can redirect to the fire department page, the police department page. It can redirect to a page that you've built that just simply says, thank you for your submission. Please dial 911 and report this to the authorities immediately. Here's your email alerts, email summaries, PDF attachments. So by clicking on, let's say, email PDF attachment, if the answer is equal to yes, this can be emailed to whoever I want it to go to. I can also have a pop-up box that when this person clicks submit, if they've clicked yes on this is a danger to the public, when they click submit, a pop-up box will immediately pop up and say, please contact the authorities as soon as possible. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use conditional logic on these forms to either email it, let's say you're filling out that volleyball sign-up form, it's not a life or death situation, but you do want the Parks and Rec director to see everyone's submission, you can do that, and it will be emailed off to them. One other thing I do want to show, and I always save this for last because this is the only thing that I'm going to show you today that costs a little bit extra. Everything is included, the calendar module, the forms module, the editing, there's no different separate charges. This is a separate charge just simply because we use a third-party organization. But you can do this with a digital signature and have this be a legal binding document. So in the case of that volleyball form, if it's a liability release, you can have it signed online. That typically runs about $1.50 a signature, and they're sold in 3 different packages, 3 tiers of annual signature package. Are there any questions about anything I've shown?
Very thorough.
Well, since you
Thank
were
you.
talking about money,
I
how
felt like
much
I
is
had
it?
to kind of rush through it. I'm glad that I was able to cover all that for you.
Are you going to take that one, Gigi?
Yeah, I'll talk to you about the price of it, which I'm just reading off of what Dan sent us. So it's, the first year is $7,500, but we are already budgeted to spend $3,200 on the website we have, so we're just off by $4,300, which we do have set aside and budgeted.
Wait, give me those numbers again. What, you had how much budgeted?
Well, we have $3,200 set aside for our existing website.
Right, and so.
But this is year 1 for this is $7,500, which includes the redesign.
Right, so we're off by more than double. But I'm just,
You're saying we can get this website for 7,500?
For the first year. And then the
After
price
that?
goes down from after that. So the second year, it's $4,000. The third year, it's $4,200. Fourth year's 4410, fifth year's 4630. Ultimately, over the 5 years, the difference between Granicus and who we have now is a total of $7,400.
So are you saying that each year, this is a maintenance fee, or is this a
Well, they host it.
staggered payment?
Dan, is he still on the phone? I don't know if, Dan, you can explain
still here.
why
I'm
it's staggered like that. I think that might be the norm in the industry, but I know that first year investment includes the redesign and the migration of.
And one more question before you move there. Are you saying Wilmington is already, I saw Wilmington as an example, they're already using this
Yeah,
website?
they recommended them
Okay.
to me, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so Dan, the staggered payment
Yes.
over the 5 years, can you
Yes.
speak to that at all?
Yeah, sure. So the annual payment is covering different things like hosting, security. As I said, we do work with some large companies, some DoD, DHS. So we're held to a very high standard of data security. We are one of only 5 GovTech companies that are FedRAMP certified, which is one of the highest certifications that you can have when it comes to data security. That also covers our help features, our different service features that I went over, that live chat, the phone, staffing that, and it also covers software updates. We push out quarterly software updates. So, for example, that forms module that I showed you was redesigned last year. We didn't charge our current customers for it. We just pushed it out to them automatically.
So, Gigi and Dan, what, if we were to do something, what would the transition period, what would it take to get up and running and make a transition? And
So, staff that I think are heavy users would go through a training with Granicus, but we would also work with them to design what we want the website to look like. But I think, Dan, you said it's ultimately 4 to 6 months to start before we go
yeah.
live with it.
So our timelines fluctuate, obviously, with the back and forth that we have with our clients. So we definitely want a lot of feedback on building the website out. We don't want to just build it, hand it to you, and go, here's the way it's going to be. Take it or take it because you can't leave it. We want this to be interactive. So we are going to be reaching out to the head of this project, who let's say is Gigi. Showing her different proofs of the homepage. Here's what it can look like. What do you think of this? So as long as that response time is reasonable, yeah, you'd be on the shorter end of the 4 to 6 months. If it takes you a week to say, yeah, I don't like that homepage design, and then we have to redesign a homepage and then send it to you, and it takes you another week, obviously things can push out a little bit longer.
thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Y'all got any other questions?
Any other questions?
No, not for Dan or Gigi. I guess I would say we
Great.
need to bring this back to,
Well,
Joe
we can-
Joe Dan has a big interest in and has constantly
Right.
brought up the webpage, so I would hate to,
Well, yeah, I think we'd need everybody here, and typically we don't do anything at a workshop like this anyway, as far as final decisions. But, yeah, it looks good.
no, I'm okay with
Well,
that.
you're talking about taking it to the next council meeting, right?
No, I'm saying how we would decide. In other words, if we were to say, yeah, sure, go, let staff start doing this.
I think
Who's
it's
going to
good.
ultimately say, yeah, I like that background, I like that webpage, I like that design? Do
I
we
would
need to
think
have
Gigi.
a very small working group of a couple of people on staff and a council person, or do we just say staff go figure it out? Or, I mean, what would you guys see how that?
I think Jerry would make the decision.
That would be Joe Dan, I would be volunteering.
do have a
He's
committee.
not
Yeah.
here today.
Well, he's not
so-
here,
So
so.
he gets
We have a
volunteering.
volunteering.
committee, and Joe
He'll be the
Dan's on
chair.
it. We
Okay,
have a website committee that Joe Dan's a member of.
okay, well, he didn't get this presentation.
There's a website committee?
There is.
When that
When did that
happen?
happen?
Do we just make committees? I mean,
Yeah, sorry, I thought I'd mentioned that when I opened up. So whenever I was first asked to look into this, I formed a committee to get feedback from all different members that are using the website. And Joe Dan was the staff member, or the council member on it, because I knew that the website was a big deal to him.
well, it's a big deal to us too, so
Right.
I'd like to know if there's a committee formed.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome.
So who's on the committee?
Dex and Sheila and Kim and myself and Eric and Joe Dan.
And that was approved by who?
I did that at the direction of Jeremy.
It's all on you, Jeremy.
Yes, that was directed
Okay,
at the
so
town manager.
Sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, that, he got word that council direction was, we need a new website, communications plan, and this was all part of that plan.
I'm just kind of shocked to hear there's been a committee formed that we don't know anything about. So,
I knew it
That's
was in
just-
some
just my thoughts.
updates.
So but this would take a budget amendment and we'd have to move forward, so can you put this on the agenda for the, meeting?
Future meeting, either August,
sir.
Okay.
September. All right. Thank you very much, Gigi.
Nice job.
All right, now who's gonna bring the discussion on the DOT-related topics? Brian, I would have guessed you.
Good morning.
that's ridiculous.
Good morning.
I just want to give you guys, there's been a request to talk about this. I want to
I'm
give you
not
guys a
complaining
brief
about the
update
stuff that
on
they're doing.
where we stand with the DOT, the ongoing communications with the DOT.
Good.
pedestrian safety. So, where we stand is, months ago, we met with them, specifically related to an accident, Cape Fear Lake Park. We met with folks, a little more broad region, and they followed up with us on this extensive list that we had. So listen, we're on board with this, and this. So what we did was go to our local district, and a few weeks ago, sent them a map in specific locations, all the crosswalks, said, here's what we want to do. We want to do supplemental signage, beacons, and the collapsible bollards. And the exact locations, and that included the Ocean, a new crosswalk at Ocean for the Greenway. They responded back in favor, said, yes, we approve, but we do need some points of clarification cleared up. We provided that last week, and we're
So
waiting.
they approved what, Brian?
Collapsible bollard signs in the middle of the crosswalks.
Collapsible bollard signs.
Yes, sir. Says
Is
Is
there.
that all the crosswalks, or
I put in for all. I requested,
those yellow?
Right. So,
that's eight crosswalks.
okay, so those would be one stationary in the middle of the street, that if someone drives over it, it collapses. Is that,
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure I understand it. They stand 24 to 30 inches
Yeah,
tall.
About 36.
It's kind of the green and the orange cone look. Is that right? And it
Yeah,
just,
that state law yield to pedestrians across.
But we have
Might
to
mess
maintain
up
them.
Some of the undercarriage, but
okay, so they approved that.
But we have to maintain them, correct?
Yes, sir. All
Okay.
this, yes, ma'am. Everything's with, we install, we maintain.
And what else did they approve?
They said yes to supplemental signage, which would be, what you see now is you see a LED perimeter around a crosswalk sign, and you have an RFB, a rapid flashing beacon, on one side of the road. So as you're driving down the road, you see that.
Right.
What we've asked for is, listen, I want to put this on the other side of the road,
Double sign.
kind of contrary to
So
what
we have
we
two
do with
things
signage.
flashing.
So when you're going, you're going to see two, one on
Right.
each side.
And
All
where,
flashing
and where do you propose doing those?
At every crosswalk.
At every, eight?
What I wanted to do was, we don't have to do this all at one time, but if we're
Understand.
going to go through this effort, let's go ahead and get approval for all of them.
Okay, so the collapsible bollards, the alternative signage, and what was the third one?
That was it.
Those two.
Well, the Ocean Boulevard.
Ocean
That's one.
Boulevard.
The ocean what?
The Ocean Boulevard Greenway crosswalk.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to make sure I clearly understand, because it has
We want to
been,
put a high visibility rapid flashing beacon signal there. We're trying to go through that. And this whole conversation we've had with them is to try to streamline that conversation and try to, with as far as encroachment agreements and what they need from us. So that's where we stand now.
So for the last couple of months, we've been talking about this. Are you saying you have the permission in hand now to do these things?
I have the approval. They said, listen, we're in approval of this, but we do need some clarification. And that was on what type of beacon we were going to use, their peculiar bollards. We provided that, and now we're just waiting on them to say, okay, yep, you can do this, and what they need as far as a paperwork process.
right, and so when you
It's
have
close.
those, Brian, at some point you can put a budget together that said, if we should do them all, this is the total cost for, and we can either do them all at once, or one a month, or one a year, or whatever, but you'll give us a total number of what you think that cost would be.
And Brian, can you give us some time frame for implementation? Because I don't think these items are very expensive like we've been talking about at Bike Ped. These are not terribly expensive items.
No, we could order those. I think the longest turnaround is going to be between when we order them, when we receive them. Sometimes there's like a
So-
formal process of getting them in, but actually installation.
Brian, those were for the DOT maintained roads.
Yes, sir.
Have you looked at any other areas in town, on town-maintained roads, where these people think these would be beneficial? Whether it's St. Joseph, or, by the school, or do we, have other, Harper, Cape Fear, are there other streets that you're thinking about doing these at, or?
At this point, we haven't looked specifically into those. We've been focusing on
DOT.
what seems to be the really problematic area. You know, we have done some of the radar speed limit signs. You guys saw those. So.
Yeah, I have a question about that. So when you say 8 crosswalks, that's DOT crosswalks, does that include Ocean?
Yeah, that's a DOT road.
That's Dow and Ocean.
As long as we're on the roadway issues, I can't remember whom I spoke to, maybe it was the chief. I've had a resident call me a number of times concerned that we're towing vehicles off of Annie Drive or St. Joseph or down by the boat ramp. So we looked into it, and it looked like the Fish and Wildlife folks are towing boats and trailers out of the parking area and along that stretch of St. Joseph down by the harbor. Can we just work on that with them a little bit? It is kind of problematic when you could bring your boat back and you want to go get your truck and your trailer and they're both gone. And I've had residents reach out to me saying, gosh, we're getting a little aggressive, and it's not us, it's Fish and Wildlife are doing that. But we need to get some communication out there. I went over there and looked, and it is posted, if you park here, you're gonna get towed, but it's so crowded over there.
Right.
Right. Yeah, we can.
Brian, is there, and I don't know if there's a way to fix this or not, but I think the timing of the lights at the crosswalks, it flashes far longer than it needs to for them to cross the road.
Specific location?
Uh,
You have mine?
all of them that I've seen, anyone that I've sent there, it'll still be flashing, and you don't even see the people that cross because they're already gone. And so it's
Look
not
into
training,
it.
it's not training people to stop every time it flashes, because if they don't see anybody, they just blow past it.
We can look into it. When we install those, we program them based on an actual walk across, and you don't want it too long, like you said.
Yeah, well,
You
right
don't
now,
want to
there's,
replace it, but you
I
don't
know
want
the
it
one
too
in
short.
Atlanta,
Yeah, they were site specific.
it was flashing and there was nobody anywhere around. I think,
We'll look at the program, maybe somehow that got reset, but it's just.
yeah, it's just a concern there that, and of course, the one at Dow Road, at Good Hops, yeah, I've looked and they're like 100 yard down the road after, and it's still flashing.
Okay.
And that one's a particularly bad one because even when I stop, I just hold my breath to make sure that somebody behind me stops.
So our agenda item says discussion on various DOT-related topics. So my other DOT-related topic, Brian, would be the light at the ABC and Publix. What is the opportunity to get a left signal light? We're gonna start seeing more traffic there, and it seems like the timing of that light isn't, I don't know if they've synced it, or they look at it, or what the trip is, or if the pressure plate's gone, but there was a number of cars backed up, and then is there an opportunity to get a leftover like there is down at Winter?
Yes, I know, DOT and Publix are coordinating that, to get that accomplished.
So when you say they're coordinating, does that mean it's a fait to complete, that's just a matter of time, or are they running a traffic study, or are they analyzing it, or when you say they're working on, what does that mean?
They've reached out, I can contact Stoney, he's,
Yeah,
working on
I
that,
spoke with Stoney.
and to get a timeline when that will be accomplished.
I mean, is that something that they've said that they recognize it needs to be there,
Yes.
and it's just a matter of
Yes.
time? So can we get the word out on that would be forthcoming? Because that's gonna dramatically change the traffic pattern in town, as does Winter. I mean, people get close to Winter and everyone jumps in the right lane, then they jump back in the left lane, and
Yeah.
Pretty thick.
it's gonna,
Right.
and do we do that, timing of those lights seasonally, so that September, October, when traffic volumes decrease dramatically, do the timing of those lights and stuff change?
On the DOT cross.
Yes, on the stoplights in general in town. I'm just out of curiosity. Okay,
I would think they would,
okay.
but I'll inquire.
And as long as we're on DOT-related topics, Ed, welcome back.
Thank you.
Get with our parking company and figure out why there's not someone at the manning the gate at Freeman Park at 8 o'clock on Friday or Saturday or Sunday mornings.
So,
Find out what we're doing with some of the broken parking meters that people are complaining aren't getting fixed and we're losing revenue. And where are we with our parking people coming up with a solution on parking golf carts, 2 in a spot? These seem to be the latest hot topics that everyone wants to, I'd like to worry about utilities, but we need to figure out these parking issues, Ed.
So, and to Steve's question, I was approached by a group of people who seem to think that the people going onto Freeman Park are going before 8 a.m. So do we need to look at having them man the gate at 6 instead of 8 on the weekends? They're going out between 6 and 8 because they know there's no one there to stop them to have them bypass.
Or do we just send the police officers out there at 8 o'clock or 5 minutes before 8 just to check if they have a valid permit? I don't know that Scott's folks want to be there at 6 in the morning.
Well, I'm just saying
Are we
that's-
issuing any tickets then, chief?
Well, that is apparently what I'm hearing from the inside, is the push is to get out there at 6 because they know there's no one there.
And if there is no one there and they're out
So
at 6,
should we have
then
police officers?
then
I
the
don't
police
know.
officer goes out before 8 and writes a
That's-
ticket.
That's my question.
So the weekend before 4th of July, the weekend of 4th of July, the weekend post 4th of July, I was at Freeman Park every single Saturday morning at 6 a.m. I saw all 3 of those Saturdays, 1 to 3 vehicles that were already parked. They all had yearly passes. We did encounter one person the very first weekend that had bought a day pass because parking was not informed. They should have bagged the sales little ticket booth there to purchase that day pass. So I was just familiar with one pass that was bought throughout that whole event. That's when we had our biggest challenges, was over the holiday weekend.
Right.
We didn't notice a whole lot of violations.
But you being there may have deterred that, the
I don't think
presence.
I don't think anybody knew I was there, and I was in an unmarked vehicle, a white Ford Expedition, and we had a lot of compliance. On a separate note, just as far as glass, illegal fires, trash, we've seen a huge uptick in compliance as well.
So,
There's a lot
again,
less
I would
people
just
out
say, if our policy is, and our parking partner has said they're gonna man the gate at 8, let's make sure they're there at 8, because I saw a post last week,
Yeah.
it was 10 o'clock and there was no one there, maybe they overslept, I don't know. And prior to 8, I don't care if people wanna go out there whenever they wanna go out there, but if before 8 o'clock, if you wanna run an officer out at 7:55 and check the passes to make sure that everyone out there has a pass, or write a ticket.
We do, and especially on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And we've also got on a schedule where linear parking is bagging the kiosk that sells day passes. So when you do arrive on a Saturday morning at 5 or 6 in the morning, it's bagged. You can't obtain one.
And why are we doing that?
That would be to discourage somebody from buying that day pass, because on weekends, we're just allowing the yearly passes.
Yeah.
But what stops that person from just going on to the park?
Us.
If
So
it's
we-
got to be
if-
there, yeah.
If we would have gone there, if we go there and see that you don't have a yearly pass in your window and start inquiring, why are you there, and you don't have a daily pass, then you would be cited for not purchasing a pass or having a yearly pass.
Thank you.
Yes.
Come back, Ryan.
All right, Brian.
So
Nice try, Brian.
If you, great job, Brian. I mean, you've done a great job. Can you get us, like Steve said, some idea of, especially this Ocean Boulevard, how long are we looking at for the rapid flashing beacon there? Go ahead.
Okay, the on the Greenway, Ocean, if the DOT gives me permission, I have it, I have the product. It's sitting back.
You have the
It's
product.
ready to go.
Okay.
So it'll be a very.
Well, let's push that.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I mean, that's part of it.
And these other items, the collapsible bollards and the signage, I would support you going ahead and ordering those, but that's just for me, because I think we've discussed them being relatively inexpensive, and I think that's what our citizens want to see, is some movement on these crosswalks.
Yeah, and those are a quick turnaround on an order, because they're not technical,
Okay.
they're not electronic.
And just a question, you and I talked about the speed, what do you call them, speed signs?
The solar speed.
Solar speed
Yeah.
sign. Great reception on those. Apparently, everybody wants them everywhere in town. If you've read the post, I tagged you in that on purpose, not for you to answer, but for you to see the comments. And people want them, and they love them. And so, did you ever get me a price on those?
Yeah, when you, I think they're actually about 26, and I misspoke. I sent you that on Saturday, said about 600. That was my mistake. About 26.
20. Well, wow, that's a big difference.
It is. So that's why they're relocatable. I don't
Yeah.
know why I thought 6, but I was sitting at home.
Well, that's a big difference.
Now, does it also gather information so that the police can
does.
respond that there's,
Yeah.
okay, this is a hot spot because it's triggering this so many times?
It's how, like, I don't care. It's got like Bluetooth program that tells you when people are speeding, how often, and
So you would know that it's flashing a lot.
So,
So if I were to ask you a question like that, how much does something cost, I'd rather you not tell me. Then I relay it to the public and it's the wrong price.
So that was my mistake.
So, well, I mean, it'll end up being mine, trust me. But,
I said that.
so I was contacted by, somehow he's on my Facebook page, the police chief of Swansboro, and he would like to know where you ordered those at.
Yeah, and I'm working through that. You sent
You
that-
saw my email?
I
Okay,
did. I have it sitting on my computer. That's why I pulled it up. I hadn't had a chance to.
okay.
Okay.
And I wouldn't be opposed to neighborhoods if they are interested, letting them participate in cost share of those.
I'm interested in the analytics that you can get from those. You said you can track how many people are speeding, so we would start understanding what our traffic flow and where the points are. Need a little more monitoring. I'm a
That
little,
would- Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a little anxious about all these signs everywhere we're putting up everywhere. At some point, the articles I've read say you get a diminishing return,
Yeah.
dramatically diminishing return. When you put up those blinking flashlights at every stop sign, people start blowing them off. When you have 8 of them two-sided down Lake Park, and I want to protect the pedestrians, and when you start putting the flashing speed limit signs throughout neighborhoods, I mean, it's going to get very, very cluttered and busy. And I've already had people complain about, we have this great island greenway, and now we want to fill it up with all these signs and flashing lights and slow down. I would ask everyone just to observe pedestrian habits. I'm not saying it's just anecdotal, but when I drive down Lake Park, I got people running in front of my car all the time that don't go to the sidewalk. I mean, that don't go to the crosswalk.
Right.
I had a huge group of adults the other night flip someone off in front of me. 4 or 5 of them just strutted right across the middle of the street, and someone honked at them, and they got kind of belligerent. And so I'm just putting that out there. I want to protect the pedestrians. I think it's important. Brian, I appreciate you getting that. But I saw DOT's comments that said the more of these you put out there, and as Tom said, if they blink for 15 or 20 seconds after a pedestrian is gone,
You're training people to blow past them. But I think you've got a good point, Steve, in fact that because if you don't have that sign, you've moved it around, and suddenly it shows up on the street, they see that. If it stays there a long time, you start ignoring it.
someone commented about one that's on 6th. I think it was 6th Avenue, between Cape Fear and one of the other, headed south, that's already overgrown. The tree's already overgrown, so will you just check on that one, Brian?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think moving around as we gather that information, if you've got a place you put it and there's no problem, then, okay, that's a low priority for the police to go checking. I think the more you get that information, the better it is to focus our limited police force in the right areas.
They're telling us where to put those.
And I think when that shows up, I know there's one, Wilmington has one on the Greenville Loop. Well, everybody's been blowing, driving too fast, but that does have an effect. People are slowing down as they go past that, and I think that's a good thing. But if it stays there forever, it becomes part of the background. So I think moving it around is a good idea. Saves a little bit of money not having to buy so many of them, and I agree, if you've got too many, it's more of a deterrent than it is a help. But I think as you move it around, it can give us valuable data and really can focus where
And
we need to
I
look.
know my close friend tells me, if you don't like the way it looks, just look the other way. That's what he tells me all the time. So if you see all those signs out there, you can just look.
Well, I agree with Steve. I don't want there to be too many signs. And the Bike Ped Committee will come to you soon enough with a presentation that they want to put signage up for recommended routes around town. So I get what you're saying. And I agree with them. Moving it around is great, which is why I tagged you in that, so you could see the locations people were saying they felt like were.
Absolutely, and that's an
Tough
easy-
issues.
It's a square channel post.
So
Yeah.
that's, I don't
Okay.
know
Thank you, Brian.
how long they need to stay at one location.
Any other
but-
questions for Brian? Thank you very much.
I had one other one, Brian.
Ah.
Just waiting for you. Just one more thing. One more thing. Where are we at with the mayor's request from DOT to approve a change in speed limit so that we could have that public conversation?
Have we even asked for that?
You were working on that, Jeremy.
I did, yes. I sent out an email with that information on there on Friday. Their district engineer, the town requested to study Dow Road, Ocean Boulevard, and North Lake Park Boulevard to reduce the speed limits. that study is has started. It usually takes about 8 to 10 weeks before we'll get those results back.
And I think
Once I
the-
do, I will update
I
council.
think the one that he was really primarily asking about was Lake Park. I think you're gonna get pushback on Dow. You can study what you
Yeah.
want, but
Yeah.
Right.
Lake Park
Agreed.
is the one that, there has been some public request to reduce it, and there's been some public pushback not to reduce it.
So
it'll be
remind me,
interesting.
where on Lake Park Boulevard, is it 35?
Where is it, 35? So it starts there right before you get to the Food Line Shopping Center. It turns 35.
And it's
And then it
35,
ends
And then
right
it goes
at
to
the
35
big
until you hit the Baptist
And-
church.
right, and then it goes
to
to
25 until
25.
you go right before the lake, and then it turns to 35, to Alabama.
Well, 35 is actually, the first sign
mean,
you
it's
get
a little
is
hokey.
just past A&G,
Do that.
is 35 miles.
By the
per
time a
hour.
driver realizes speed limit's changed, it's changed again.
And then it stays 35 until you get to Curry Beach. Then it's 25 going through Curry Beach, and then it's 35 the rest of the way. On Ocean, the only one that would probably be subject is from Dow Road to when it turns to 35. They used to be 55, but they got it reduced when we did the 35 on Ocean. That part is 45. Certainly, I think changing that to 35 all the way to Dow would be good, but I'm not sure that that they would do that for the state. But it certainly would be beneficial because the crossing for the Greenway is right in the middle of the 45.
The Greenway changes things. It does, because, yeah, as soon as you turn on, Ocean now, it's 45, and then it changes once you get to Spot to 35.
Was that one of your requests, Ocean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's a state road where I live. And I see plenty of traffic.
I don't think you would have many complaints on Ocean, Lake Park, I don't know. Definitely Dow would be a controversy.
Well, Dow would be because of Curie. Curie does not have any interest in doing that.
And I
At
did let
least what I've told,
the mayor,
ones I've talked to.
I
The
left
mayor
him a
doesn't,
message
yeah.
to know that we requested DOT to look at it.
Right, right. Okay, anything else about the DOT? We'll move on to our D item, the town manager hiring discussion.
Mayor Council, at our July regular scheduled meeting, you requested staff move forward with advertising for the town manager position and an interim town manager position, but you also requested for us to search for a consultant that could manage that. We did reach out to the Mercer Group, and they have a proposal that's before you. The interim town manager is not to exceed $1,000, and they move forward with a candidate fairly quickly. The town manager process is laid out in several steps, and that would take quite a bit longer. They're estimating in the end of April is when they would, under the process, is when they would have somebody in here as a full-time manager.
Back that all up. Start over with that, Ed? Tell me.
Didn't you
I
read
must have
that
been
letter?
daydreaming.
Which part?
The part about waiting until
Oh.
April? I just,
April
That's the
is,
Mercer-
so-
The Mercer Group is estimating.
I thought we
that's
were
how
reaching
long
out
it'd
to the
take
Council
if
of
they helped
Governments.
us.
okay.
And it would
Thank you.
cost us about $18,000.
I don't remember the Mercer Group. I remember the Council of Governments.
Cape
But
Fear
it was
Council
on
of
the
Government.
email that we got
Yeah, I saw that.
attached.
Yeah, Cape Fear Council of Government doesn't have the resources to manage
Right.
this type of activity. So it's typically what other communities do, and there's a list that the Mercer Group have helped over the last 10 or so years in your packet.
I think Nag said is one of them.
Yeah. Most recently, Emerald Isle used them
Emerald
as
Isle,
well. So they had a long-term manager transition out over the summer as well.
You
So-
keep mentioning a packet. We don't have a packet that I know of, because I've
We
checked
had
twice.
an email before.
I know about emails, but I'm asking about a package for this workshop.
Okay, yes, you should have a
We do not.
proposal. Well, I can get you a hard copy if you don't have it in front of you, but basically the proposal would be executing the contract. They have down August 15th, and the timelines would be consultant meet individually with council and department heads to discuss the desired background would happen in the fall. They would do the job ads starting in December, and recruitment brochure, late December. And begin disseminating the brochure in January. Phone conversations with strong candidates, January, February. Application deadline in early February. Council meeting to consider recommending candidates mid-February. Council interviews late February. And then a vote for appointment in March, and then April, have them actually in here. So that's probably a longer timeline than you might want to see, and it could be expedited, but that was.
I'm sure
I
it's a
think
longer
they're-
timeline than you want to see too.
Well, I'm hoping we can move forward the interim
Um,
and get some
no.
help in, but yeah, that's what they have here. So
Okay,
I
so
can-
did we reach out to the Council of Governments?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
and
yeah, that's not something that they,
Can't help us with that.
they're providing that service. They're not providing that service.
okay, so do we have an ad out? I think we directed,
If you'd like for us to move forward without the consultant, we can. Go ahead and move
I
forward.
thought at the last council meeting, we directed for an ad to be put out.
My understanding was you wanted us to move forward, but you wanted us to look at Cape Fear Council of Government or a consultant headhunter. And so we went forward as fast as we could to find somebody that could help us with the process. If you want us to do it internally, we certainly can do that.
I thought we had asked for an ad to be formulated to put out for an interim or for a full-time manager, depending on who applied for it, and to look at research groups.
Well, the research group they came up with.
They would do like a
no,
advertisement brochure. They would help with the recruitment process.
How much?
They've have it itemized out. The total is 22.5.
Potentially, the 4,500 is a maximum cost, 18,000 is the base price, and then up to
Never charge the
4,500
base.
for, which it probably max out at that, but that's the maximum cost of their expenses.
So you're looking at a recruitment brochure is 2,500, candidate recruitment outreach is 2,500, resume review is 4,500, candidate screening and background investigation is 3,000, interview process is 4,000, negotiation and transition assistance is 1,500, makes up your 18,000.
18,000.
So we could negotiate any piece of that, or we could do it internally.
Which is what I'd be more inclined to do, is negotiate pieces to that. I think there's been some miscommunication both from us and to you guys. I thought we had asked staff to start working towards an interim to help Ed on a couple of different options. One was an individual, and one was to see about allocating responsibilities to existing department heads to alleviate some of the workload from the interim town manager. One. Two, I thought we had asked you and Ms. Fox and Holly to review the previous postings that we had and come back with some kind of general posting idea so that we could start towards a posting. I thought the general consensus was we really didn't want to wait. It's hard for me because I hear what you say, and April might be a realistic time frame for a professional company to go in and help us. That puts us really late into the budget season,
Yeah.
which may be the best thing for the town. I don't know. I'm just trying to digest what you're telling us. 22,000, 18,000 is a lot to lay on top of trying to find while we're bearing the cost of some of these other expenses. I think a brochure, a professionally done employment brochure, would be a good touch that we haven't done. I'm pretty confident that council and our HR manager can negotiate with the help of our town council attorney a benefit package and a proposal to a candidate if we should select one. So I'm kind of weighing some of those. I don't disagree with Leanne. I think it would be good sooner rather than later to get some kind of posting out there that's open to see if we're missing a possible candidate that's out there right now that might fit the bill. I do like the idea of somebody formulating that job search. You know, the last two times we went through this, the previous one, we wanted to find someone that had a project management background That was important to us, and we made a candidate selection on that. It lasted a number of years based on someone that was heavy on project management. This last time, we went a different direction, and we wanted personality traits and professional attributes that were specific, and we thought we hired that candidate. That didn't work out. So I thought what we were looking for was some feeling from council members and from staff, and maybe from some citizen input on what's important in the community. We talked earlier today about, our pay study fella brought up that he looked on the website and we didn't have a town vision or mission statement, but every department did. And I know we've heard from the public, you know, that we should be crafting a vision statement. And we're in the process of doing a website update, and we've got the land use plan. Maybe now, you know, it's hard to hire a manager if you don't know what the vision statement is that someone's coming in to execute.
Right, but, yeah, I think one of the things we can look at is, if we got an interim person in, yeah, an interim's gonna be a different type of candidate than somebody that's gonna get the job full-time. They may be a retired person that comes in, they've got a lot of experience, but they don't wanna have a long-term job. But they could actually come in and help to formulate some of the mission statements. In the Presbyterian Church, they do that when they have an interim person, because it takes a long time in the Presbyterian Church to get the minister full-time. And in the meantime, that one person helps to assess what's needed in that church for that particular position. And so that's part of their role, is not only being the bridge to the new,
Right.
but they also help to assess it as well. So I think I would want us to go ahead and move as fast as possible to get the interim in, because even if you do it in a hurry, it may be that we crunch into budget time again, which we've found is not a benefit to the town or the candidate. But that way, we hopefully would be able to make that process smoother and maybe a long-term solution rather than a short-term as we had this past time.
If it works for council, we can go ahead and move forward with the Mercer Group to help us move forward now.
$1,000, I think we could probably do it by ourselves, but that's my opinion.
Do what ourselves?
Advertise for the interim and move forward.
For an
with that
interim,
as
and I
quick
think
as
Leanne,
possible.
and Leanne, you would also like to have something out there for a full-time in case we have the right candidate out there
I'm just
now?
having a real problem understanding why it's not understood. I'm probably really direct. Let me say it again. I thought we said it 2 weeks ago, that we want an advertisement for an interim and/or a full-time
I don't have any
manager.
problems with that.
We don't have to hire anybody, but at least we're putting it out there that's available, and let's see what we get. I don't want to pay $22,000 for the Mercer Group. Now, are there parts of it? Yes, I agree with Steve, that maybe there are parts of that we want.
Well, $1,000.
But now we've wasted 2 more weeks.
Yeah, $1,000 just to get the interim I don't know if it'd be worth it or not. I think I'd like
I'd have to
prior-
look at it because this is the package that I have.
Yeah.
Okay. It's-
That's one, every time you say that, I'm like, what package? You know?
Yes, well, okay, I got you. So, well, if, I think they could do, and we could limit them to $500 to help with the interim, because I think they probably have some good candidates. If I could move forward with that, we could get the interim moving forward, and we'll go ahead and advertise for the manager position, and,
I would have to review the package from the Mercer Group. I don't know what part of that you're asking for.
it's $500
For what?
for advertising for an interim. They
So-
have some candidates that they can bring in and get us,
Can we not do the advertisement ourselves?
we sure can.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's try that first.
all right.
Ed,
Okay.
my bigger question was, we had talked about the description of what the interim would do, and we had looked at a couple of different options. One would be an actual town manager, another would be a part-time person that would come in and take certain aspects that are burdensome to you while you perform your other roles. And another option was to see if there's more opportunity for growth within our department heads. So when we say we're just gonna go out and get an interim manager, can you give me an idea of what job description you would be looking for? Are you looking for 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, someone that handles everything, or?
I think there's multiple things that are going on with Carolina Beach right now, and it would be that that I need help with, it really depends on that person as far as, I mean, I think we would need somebody for 40 hours. We think we could do it at that and without overtime and just have a 40-hour contract and them come in. But it's really going to be dependent on that person's, if are they going to be just the budget management person, or are they going to be able to delve into some personnel issues? Are they going to be able to delve us into some CIP issues that we have going on? I don't know. I think it's going to be that mix of that person we get in.
And I don't want to look at an interim that you're going to have to spend all your time training.
Right.
I mean, it's just defeating the purpose if you have to train them how to help you.
Right. I would think that the person who would be interested in the interim would not be a novice. They would, and we wouldn't hire a novice. We would hire somebody with plenty of experience that may be maybe they're retired and they want to come out of retirement, just like Bruce did.
Right. We've had that before. We had Bob Nickel for multiple times as interim manager. I don't think he does it anymore, but he.
Right, but there's probably other people.
And when we had Bob Nickel, who I'm not familiar with the many times that we had him, what did Bob do?
He filled in as an interim for us and other communities, and basically managed the budget, managed personnel issues, and was a go-to for department heads if they had issues. And he did sit in this chair and help facilitate the council meetings.
I don't remember. I
So
remember
you
Bruce.
Holly, as you formulate the advertisement, you could share with us the job description that you're using as part of that posting, and maybe that'll alleviate
Yeah.
some of your
Yeah.
questions.
And that's a good question, Tom. Holly, how long will it take you to formulate that ad? And I would think that you should already have it since we've done it twice recently. Maybe just a few adjustments a day?
Yeah, by Friday you can have that ready. Then we'll see you at the end of the week. Sound good? Any other questions? Any non-agenda items, Steve or Leanne?
I just wanted to say, so Jeremy has done an awesome job in the last 10 days while Ed has been gone. Just awesome job. I mean, there's not one thing, bless his heart, I think I emailed him 100 times, but I mean, he did everything that you would have expected him to do
Right.
while you were gone. So I just want to say what a great job you did in Ed's absence.
Way to go,
I'm
Jeremy.
sure you guys probably think the same. The other thing is Freeman Park sales to date. If we could get some update on the passes sold, daily passes sold in the last couple months in comparison to last year, I think we're going to need that data to see where we're at with sales. Maybe if you could compare, I'd say last 3 years.
I think we're going to have to put quite a bit of data together for Freeman Park, but we will work on that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Leanne's asking for is we need to see some day pass. We're going to have a budget impact. We need to start telegraphing or looking down the road of what we think that's going to be. Freeman Park's difficult to budget because we go on a calendar year for the annual passes, but we're on a
Right.
fiscal year. And so when we look at the dollars coming in and we look at 18, 19, how much of in 19, 20 are we into? But, the ROT report that we get shows month by month, year over year. So we get a monthly comparison. And
Right.
I think that might be beneficial to see where we're at.
Where we're headed.
And where you think we're gonna end up and what the impact's gonna be, because we had all those annual passes that we sold, but those were in last year's budget. That was in last year's revenue.
Right.
We don't get Freeman Park annual pass revenue until
January,
this fall,
December and January.
if we choose to do that. So we have that to look at.
Right.
The camping issues come up again, so there's some issues out there. And Leanne, were you done? Because I did have one, I didn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Land use plan.
I had one for that.
So
too.
we had a meeting. It was great. We had a lot of public show up and participate, and it started a fury of activities. And I have asked Jeremy, and he sent me a copy of the resolution that we passed establishing the development line. But the real question is, what was the underlying language that CRC approved, and what those bullet point definitions are that we are allowed to determine as a community behind our development line when it comes to setbacks and building size, and there seems to be some confusion, certainly I'm confused about it, of what CRC said we were allowed to do. That becomes more important with our land use plan, because now we have seen a proposed inlet hazard overlay, which is just a new, it's not the current one, it's a proposed one, and it's caused a lot of people with some language in the land use plan, Ed. There's some proposed language in there that was, I would say, explosive. When you start talking, quote, a possible use could be not rebuilding the building, but paving it and putting an RV park up. That was just a hypothetical, but that isn't what the public latched onto. They latched onto, you said, if my building gets destroyed, you're gonna turn it into a concrete pad and RV park. It says we can't rebuild our buildings. It says we're changing heights and we're changing zones. We're not changing zones, but there was a lot of stuff in the land use plan that lit it up. The changes to the harbor, the zone, the allowable uses, the densities on Canal and Carolina Beach. So it is a great start, but we got some work to do to either educate ourselves, make some changes, or educate the public, because it was
We do have quite a bit of work to do. I think people have really grasped on and started gaining more visibility. We've been done a lot of work. Jeremy's done a lot of work advertising our land use plan and getting folks interested. We are getting a lot of comments. I just want to ask council and the community to funnel those through our planning department and not through directly to the consultant.
Yes.
So we can
I agree.
have those funneled, and we'll work with the consultant and get those addressed.
But Ed, I can tell you, many citizens, against my advice, are calling the consultant directly instead of going through staff. I recommended that they copy Jeremy and me or whoever, and then Jeremy can send that to the consultant.
Right.
But that's
We'll-
not what's
we'll-
happening.
We'll compile them, and so we'll keep putting that message out to send it through us and not Stewart Engineering.
Trust me, it's very stressful for what council's hearing out of the land use plan, and I've been sitting on it for the last year, and some of the stuff I just haven't seen, and it's concerning. And to Steve's point, I don't understand why we're putting the proposed IHA in there instead of the one that's approved.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have some more meetings on that and do some education on that and the building line and,
Well, it has to do specifically with, and Jeremy and I have talked about it, it has to do with both the stuff on the north end. There's some large condo buildings that we specifically addressed, and there's multiples. And what happens is when you start not being able to rebuild a building as a use by right, then during the period when it's a quote non-conforming use, it is very difficult for a new purchaser to obtain financing. So if you have a condo building that has 8 units, and there are 3 8-unit buildings in a complex, and one of those is determined to be grandfathered, it just makes a mess for all 24 of them to try and sell and refinance their unit. Financing is very difficult these days, and so we have to look at the repercussions of what our ordinances and those policies allow.
Right.
And then the other is, when we see redevelopment opportunities occurring on the north end from the central business district or just south of the central business, up through the TI zone on the ocean front with the VE and the AE and the mixed use and what happens behind the development line and how we measure that, we've been through that, right, with that one applicant.
Right.
We need to have a pretty clear statement, because otherwise they call a council person and say, I'm not getting what I want with staff, and we sit down with staff, and staff says, this is the way we interpret it, and someone else, we just need a clear understanding of what the CRC ruling and our development line allows.
okay.
And I would suggest, because they work for us, the consultant, if they do get anything from the citizens or anybody else, that they just funnel it straight to Jeremy, and they don't respond to it.
Okay.
There's no reason for them to respond. They don't have to, they just need to send it to Jeremy.
Well, I tried to explain to the citizen that I know that called, I said, we don't know what you said to them. If you said it to them on the phone, we need to know what it is too, so that we can make sure it gets in those comments. So I noticed that Jay had said, basically, you had a contract. We have a contract with them, and we would have to extend that contract if we change our dates?
If we do, I think we do have a certain contract, a certain number of meetings that we set up for Stewart Engineering. So Same thing happened with our last plan. You know, it typically happens that you get to the end of the plan and people get very involved, which is fine, but we would probably have to negotiate with Stewart to extend if we're going to have some more meetings.
I guess my question was, when I hear from Leanne, and I heard from a couple of the P and Z folks that are on that committee, that there's language in there that they had never seen before. I'm kind of curious as who's drafting that language. Is that the consultant drafted that language, or staff drafted that language, or who, I mean, because I started reading through it, I'm like, wow, I see where people, and it's interesting that our committee said, we've never discussed that or haven't had that language in there, and it shows up in a final draft format for the last
Okay.
public meeting before it goes to P and Z, and that's when the top blew off.
Right, and that's not staff, that is, our consultant is drafting the plans.
I mean-
We'll work with them on that.
I thought maybe I zoned out or missed something. I have not missed a meeting. And I had to call the other members and said, did you hear this? Because maybe I just missed it.
And-
But they said the same thing.
And on August 22nd, we'll be meeting with our consultant along with the committee to go over the specific items as well.
And like I suggested, I think we must have any changes or additions have to be highlighted. We can't dig through those 60 pages every time to find one little phrase that's been changed. You know, that's my suggestion.
So more of a red line. Okay,
Okay.
beautiful.
Just highlight.
all I had.
Any other non-agenda items?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I make a motion that we go into closed session to discuss a real estate matter in accordance to NCGS 143-318.11A5. The real estate matter includes properties located at 310 Canal Drive and 3 Carolina Beach Avenue South for the purpose of parking. Also, closed session for 143-318.11A3, attorney-client privilege, Town of Carolina Beach versus Carolina Freeman LLC, 18 CVS 3151, Town of Carolina Beach versus BNF Enterprises LLC, 18 CVS 3152, Town of Carolina Beach versus DRDK LLC, -18 CVS 3153, Town of Carolina Beach versus Freeman Beach LLC, -18 CVS 3154. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fine job, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I try my best.